Engrave this on your wall. Survival is victory, because that single sentence reframes everything you think you know about who is winning and who is losing this war. And before we go any further, let us be precise about something. There are no real winners in any war. But if we are going to talk about victory, we first need to understand what victory actually means to each side. Because in this conflict, the two sides are not even playing the same game. This was supposed to be a weekend operation, a surgical strike, decapitate the Iranian leadership, trigger internal chaos, produce regime collapse within days. That was the plan. We are entering week 5. The gap between what was promised and what has happened is one of the most significant strategic miscalculations the Western world has witnessed in a generation. And the mainstream media is not explaining why. On day 0, the United States and Israel executed what military planners call a decapitation strike. The supreme leader was killed. Senior commanders were eliminated. That part of the plan technically worked. But what the CIA and Mossad failed to account for was what came next. The succession. Mojtaba Khamenei has now emerged as his father's successor. He is younger, he is more hardline, he has deep established ties with the Revolutionary Guard, and on the first day of this war, he lost his father, his wife, his daughter, his sister, and his brother-in-law, in a single strike. Think about that for a moment. Every morning when the new supreme leader opens his eyes, the first thing on his mind is not negotiation, it is not compromise, it is not a 15-point peace proposal. The CIA and Mossad did not just fail to prevent the succession, they handed the succession to someone more dangerous, more motivated, and more willing to absorb punishment than the man they killed. That is not a tactical setback, that is a strategic catastrophe. A professor at Johns Hopkins University framed the entire conflict in one sentence this week: for Iran, survival is victory. Iran is not trying to defeat the United States militarily. They know that is impossible. Their strategy is something far more patient and far more sophisticated. Absorb the punishment, inflict enough cost, hold on long enough that the political and economic price for Washington and Tel Aviv becomes unsustainable and their own allies start pushing back. Long contained to the product, that strategy is already working. Look at the economics of the actual fighting, because this dimension explains something mainstream coverage consistently misses. Op-ed-frit the weight is, every Iranian drone costs between $10,000 and $30,000 to produce. Every American interceptor missile costs approximately $1 million. Iran has an estimated stockpile of 80,000 drones. The math is not complicated. When the United States intercepts 1,000 drones, Iran does not declare defeat. It launches 15,000 more. When those are intercepted, it launches 20,000 more. The interceptor stockpile is finite. The drone production line is not. Iran is not trying to win every individual exchange. It is trying to exhaust the defense systems, drain the interceptor reserves, and reach the point where the missiles start getting through consistently. That is a war of attrition deliberately designed to bankrupt the defender, and it is working. Now look at the negotiation track, because the contradiction between Washington's words and Washington's actions is almost impossible to explain away. The Trump administration sent Iran a 15-point ceasefire proposal, complete dismantlement of its nuclear program, full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, severing all ties with Hezbollah, ending support for Palestinian groups, cutting connections with Yemen. In other words, Iran was being asked to surrender everything it has built over decades of regional strategy, in exchange for the bombs stopping. Iran's response was rational. Before this war began, talks were already underway in Oman. Iran had signaled genuine willingness to reach an agreement. And then the day after those signals were sent, the bombs fell. The supreme leader was assassinated. Iran agreed to a nuclear framework during Trump's first term. Trump walked away from it, tore it up unilaterally. Now the same administration is asking Iran to sign a new version of essentially the same deal after bombing the country for 4 weeks. Why would any government trust that? What guarantee could possibly be credible after that track record? But here is the part that makes this even more unstable. While the Trump administration is publicly discussing peace proposals, it is simultaneously deploying paratroopers, soldiers specifically trained to jump into territory and seize it. 2,500 Marines from an expeditionary unit already en route to the region, peace proposal in one hand, paratroopers in the other. Iran read that combination perfectly clearly, and they responded with what analysts described as dark humor, releasing a satirical video referencing the Iraq model of occupation, signaling that they know exactly what the paratroopers are for. Trump needs this war to end before November. He has midterm elections in 7 months. Gas prices in the United States have already risen 30%. Americans are not happy. The feeling growing within the U.S. military, and this is being reported, not speculated, is that American soldiers are fighting and dying for Israeli interests, not American ones. No ordinary American feels ownership of this war. And when the body bags start coming home in significant numbers, that sentiment is going to harden into something no messaging can contain. Netanyahu does not operate on that timeline. His political survival depends on military escalation, not de-escalation. And that fundamental divergence in interests is beginning to crack the alliance open in real time. This past weekend, the White House rushed to distance itself from Israeli strikes on one of the world's largest gas fields. Trump said publicly that Israel acted alone, that he was not informed in advance, that it would not happen again. The senior partner in a military coalition publicly disclaiming responsibility for strikes by the junior partner. That is not an alliance, that is two governments pursuing incompatible objectives while nominally fighting the same war. So how does this end? Two scenarios are emerging that every serious analyst is now examining. The first, a simulated victory. Trump announces that primary military objectives have been achieved. Israel makes similar declarations. Iran simultaneously declares that it survived a military assault from two of the world's most powerful armed forces, which it did, and presents that survival as a historic triumph. Both sides signed something resembling what they were negotiating before the war started. Both sides sell their domestic audiences a version of events that looks like victory. Nobody announces a defeat. The world moves on. We have seen this before. It is not satisfying, but it is how wars between unequal powers often end. The second scenario is darker. Trump concludes that Netanyahu is operating outside his control, dragging the United States deeper into a conflict that is costing him the midterms. He pulls back. America withdraws. Israel is left fighting alone, a country of 9 million people against a nation of 90 million, with no coalition air support, and an enemy that has already demonstrated it can damage aircraft carriers and down advanced fighter jets. Under either scenario, if Iran survives, China and Russia move immediately to rebuild it, not gradually, immediately, armed to a level it has never previously reached. China is not involved in this war. China is studying it, every vulnerability exposed in U.S. carrier groups, every gap in the air defense network, every drone that got through, every aircraft that did not make it back. While everyone else is bleeding, China is manufacturing, stockpiling, and learning. The bottom line: for the United States and Israel, victory was always defined as regime change, the end of the Ayatollah system, a compliant Tehran. None of that is happening. None of it appears within reach. For Iran, victory is simply still being here when the smoke clears, still governing, still an independent state, still capable of projecting influence in the region. And on that measure right now, at the end of week 4 going into week 5, Iran is closer to its definition of victory than the United States is to its own. Someone is going to blink first in this conflict. The question of who and when is what determines everything that comes next. Evidence first, analysis second. You decide what it means. Subscribe and turn on notifications. When the blink comes from either direction, the analysis will be here.